Hey boys and girls, today we have a very special science experiment for you. We have been talking about living things and non-living things and how living things need a habitat in order to survive. And if you think back to what we have learned so far, a habitat is a place that has everything a plant, animal, or even a human needs in order to survive. We also talked about how we as humans have a habitat too. So today the habitat that we are going to look at is a river habitat. And the animal that we are going to talk about in a story is a fish. Now it's not a real fish. Just wait till a second. Okay. It's not a real fish, but just a fish cut out with a sponge. Now, Mrs. Hainsworth is going to help us with our experiment today. She is going to read a story about a fish named Freddy.
Since our story, Freddy the Fish, does not have any pictures, I'm going to zoom the camera in on his habitat so you can see what happens to his habitat as we read our story.
All right, let's get this experiment started.
Freddy the Fish. This is Freddy the Fish. He is a happy fish that lives in crystal clear water, enjoys the shade of the tall trees along the riverbank, and gets lots of insects to munch on each day. How do you think Freddy feels?
Well, he looks pretty happy in his habitat. He has everything that he needs and that water is nice and clean.
One day, Freddy wondered what was beyond his little part of the river. He decided to go on a little journey and explore. He heads on downstream. He's ready to see the world. Along the river, Freddy first comes across a spot where bulldozers are taking out trees and clearing land. Soil and dirt roll into the river because there are no tree roots to hold the soil in place. Poor Freddy gets soil in his gills. Without the trees, Freddy notices he is feeling warmer. As Freddy continues down the river, he spots some black and white animals moving closer and closer to the river. While these animals are getting a drink, they drop a present into the water for Freddy. Freddy is not impressed with the smell or that the sediment is being stirred up. As Freddy rounds the corner, he has to dodge a golf ball that nearly lands in the river. The golf club likes to keep their course looking nice, so they use a lot of fertilizer. Unfortunately, when it rained last, it caused it to run off into the river. Freddy noticed that this area had a lot of tall plants growing and actually was starting to feel smothered. However, Freddy is a trooper and he charged on. He was determined to see all the river had to offer. After a while of swimming, Freddy began to notice a salty taste to the water, and he started to feel the sting of salt in his gills. All the salt that was used on the roads in the winter had worked its way into the river. Ouch! It's hurting! How do you think Freddy is feeling?
Well, so far his habitat is pretty dirty. Between the dirt and the fertilizer, the cows and the salt, it looks like it could use some cleaning.
Freddy continues on and passes a picnic site at a local park. As he was passing, the wind began blowing litter into the river from the park. Freddy is starting to feel a bit distressed, but he keeps moving on. It begins to rain, and Freddy notices this rain is different. It turns out this rain is acid rain caused by the air pollution. Along the river edge, Freddy comes across an old abandoned factory. There are a lot of toxic pollutants and rusty materials seeping into the river. This creates a sludge in the river. Freddy tries to swim through it. After struggling, Freddy finally gets through the toxic pollutants in the river. Along the side of the river, Fred notices a man dumping oil from his car into the river. The oil gets into his gills and he starts to have difficulty breathing. He gasps and takes his last breath.
Boys and girls, look how different Freddy's habitat is after all of that pollution. The dirt, the fertilizer, the litter, the salt from the roads. There were many different things that affected Freddy's habitat in a not so great way. So, as you're doing your assignment, think about ways that humans can affect the habitats of animals.
For your assignment today, you're going to either draw a picture of Freddy's habitat before the pollution happened and then after the pollution happened, or you can do a video of yourself describing Freddy's habitat at the beginning of our experiment or after our experiment. We cannot wait for you to show us what you've learned.